What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Absolute Batman, and yet another team up with Absolute Wonder Woman. The last one happened in her comic, this one happens in his. So what this does is it actually picks up over the course of a few days. We initially start off on Friday, when Bruce Wayne is basically asleep, not really on the job site, but just kind of taking a bit of a nap. And the construction workers are busting his balls, as is to be expected on this kind of a job site. And one of the guys is like, "Late night, big guy, what have you been doing with yourself?" And that's one of the funny things here is because they're kind of doing cleanup duty in the aftermath of Batman's fight with Absolute Bane. And it's one of the things they say. Do you believe that, Batman? Right? The city would never demolish this old stadium. Batman did it in a day. Right? And they're like, let's pour this concrete, right? 150 new units. Gotham needs it. And they're kind of asking a few idle questions, right? Like, who was that Bane thing, right? It makes you wonder if Bats really is right about the things that are going on here in Gotham City. So it's an important statement because it means that the average person is beginning to consider the fact Batman's not just a crazy guy who is making stuff up. He is a crazy guy, but he's not making things up, that he's actually telling the truth about what's happening in Arc M. It's not enough that it's like swaying public opinion, but it's got people talking, and that's kind of how that ball gets rolling. And so that's where, again, they kind of continue on, and there's a bit of idle chat and so on and so forth. But then we end up meeting Lucius Fox. Now, Lucius Fox, as most of you guys know, is a long-standing Batman character. In this instance, instead of being the head of some major corporation, Wayne Enterprises, essentially, he's actually just the foreman, right? He's the guy running the show here at the construction site, right? And he says, your absence, I gotta say, Bruce, it's good to have you back. And that's where Bruce just says, it won't happen again, Mr. Fox, but he says, I know you, which means I know you wouldn't have taken off unless something serious was going on. So as your friend, I just want to make sure, are you okay? And Bruce dismisses him, right? He's like, everything's fine, right? Kind of cuts him off there. And so Lucius is like, well, then do something for me this weekend, right? And Batman asks him what? And he just says, get out there, right? Touch some grass, ride a horse, get in a fight, just do something, man, besides coming here and working all the time. And so at that point, you switch over to Gotham Presbyterian. And this is when we actually start to see a follow-up from a lot of the things that had happened with Absolute Bane, namely Oswald Cobblepot and Harvey Dent. Because when Bruce shows up, he just says, right, I brought subs, your usuals, right, double steak for you, Harv, and for Oz, the bird supreme. And that's where Harvey just tells him, right, I mean, that's really thoughtful of you, except keep in mind, Oswald cannot eat solid foods yet. And so Bruce kind of forgot about this momentarily. And that's where you find out Oswald is very angry at everything that had happened, which kind of makes perfect sense. Absolute Bane literally crumpled him up like a piece of paper, broke every single bone in his body. So now he's kind of this crushed, shrunken down human being as opposed to the person that we knew before. And there's a lot of anger and wrath here because he says, at least Selina left us that crappy dough before she took off. And that's where Harvey just says, there's a true friend. Did she leave you anything, Bruce? Your usual, a broken heart on a roll. And he just says, I didn't come here to fight. And that's when Oswald starts laying into him, right? Well, then why did you come here, Bruce? To make things better, to patch things up, to rebuild? Everyone looks at me, Harvey and Ed and everybody, and they think we're monsters, but you chose this. And now you can't even look at us. Can you? Right? You can't look at us at all. And Bruce just kind of looks down. And that's where Oswald said, that's what I thought, right? You're real good at saving the city. How about next time you try saving one of your friends for a change? And so when Bruce goes to walk away, Harvey tells him, right, like, walk away, big hero, right? You are not him. You are not a hero at all. And that's where Harvey's just kind of like, that's pretty harsh, Oz. And where Oz just kind of like grunts a little bit, Harvey's like, no, man, I mean, he deserved it 100%, because lest we forget, right, whether it was Bruce Wayne's intention or not, the reality here is that he put his friends in harm's way. He put them directly in the path of Bane by going to war with Bane. And it's one of the things that Alfred told him, be very careful about what you're doing. Bane seemingly has nothing to lose, at least nothing that you know of, but you have everything. You've got friends, you've got what remains of your family, people he can go after. And where Bruce Wayne was being reckless, right, living in the moment and not really thinking about the consequences of his actions, or if he was thinking the consequences wouldn't be that extreme, it turned out they were. Right, they were about as extreme as it gets. And so what he ends up doing is going to the Gotham Museum of Natural History, kind of walking through and looking at a few things, and then he takes out that amulet that was given to him by Absolute Wonder Woman. And he says, I demand an audience with Diana of the Wild Isle. And that's where she appears here, right? She says, since the talisman will only work 3 times, I can assume you are summoning me for something dire. And this is really interesting here. And I love the way that Scott Snyder handles this. Batman says, I have a friend who was changed, mutated into something half human, half animal, and he's getting worse. Your myths are full of beings who go from human to beast and beast to human. I was hoping something here, some artifact, might be able to help my friend. And she just says, my lasso, sacrifice, is the only tool I know that can do transmogrification at that scale. But for a chaotic mind, it would be disaster. And so she says, I'm afraid there is nothing to cure your friend anywhere on this plane. That's an important statement because she says, I do know of one artifact that might help in the other realm, but the journey would be long and deadly, a few weeks travel at least. And so in turn, Bruce just says, I have a job. Right? And that's where she tells him, luckily, time moves differently there. But as I said, the danger of this is pretty intense. But Bruce is pretty desperate. And in fact, he basically admits that. He says, if there's something there to help Waylon, I want to go now. And she just says, as you wish. And so in turn, she casts a spell, right? Accept this blood of sacrifice of Diana of the Wild Isle, daughter of Circe, and ultimately ends up opening a portal for her and Bruce to travel through. And that's kind of the crazy thing because now Bruce Wayne is in uncharted territory. And lest we forget, Absolute Batman is nothing like Batman from the main DC universe. Batman in the main DC universe will be able to figure this place out immediately and be able to just kind of navigate it accordingly. Absolute Batman is not nearly on that level. We do know he would beat the tar out of Batman from the main DC universe, but in terms of his mental acuity, not quite there. And so when they enter here, he asks the question, is this Hades, right? Is it basically hell? And she says no, right? This is a place that exists between the surface world and the underworld, beneath my mother's island, where the veil between realms is thin. The being we seek to challenge, Arcalis, he guards a bridge very far from here, so let's get going. And he asks, what about your flying horse, right? What about Pegasus? But she makes a good point. If we were to fly through here on a horse, it would make us very easy targets. And she says, even then, Pegasus isn't really a big fan of you, Batman. In fact, no one is. No one likes you, Batman. I mean, I do, but no one likes you at all. And so at that point, she's just like, come on, right? We're gonna walk. And so as they're going through this, it takes like 12 days or like 2 weeks to navigate this whole place. But Wonder Woman kind of warns him of all these things along the way, right? If you look at the lightning, it will kill you. If you listen to the song of that bird, it will kill you. If you stumble, the sands will kill you. If you tell me that One Piece is better than Dragon Ball Z one more time, I will kill you, right? It's just kind of over and over and over again. But in all seriousness, it's an exceedingly dangerous place, right? Everything here kind of goes after you. And so at that point, on day 11, he sees a Cyclops. And he's like, is that really a Cyclops? And Wonder Woman says, yes, right? If you look it in the eye, and he just says, he'll kill me. And she says, no, right? It's just impolite. Like, why would he kill you? It's just a really rude thing to do. And so it's like by day 12, they're like, let's keep going. At the end of day 12, they set up camp, right? And she says that it's best to make camp before the bloodworms wake up. Batman ends up making a fire. The two of them kind of sit there for a little while. And then they kind of have this conversation. By the time you get to day 13, day 14, day 16, they're kind of learning about each other in a way that they hadn't necessarily learned about before, right? Batman is learning that Absolute Wonder Woman comes from like the actual realm of hell. She says, my mother always made certain it was also a home. Batman tells her about his story, and he says, the next thing I remember, policemen were yelling my name, pulling the bats off of me. She says, no child should lose their father that way. I'm truly sorry, Bruce. It's a cool connective moment between these two. And truth to tell, I'm actually kind of surprised that we're getting an Absolute Batman, Absolute Wonder Woman crossover before a Wonder Woman Superman crossover or Superman and Batman crossover, just because Superman Wonder Woman was one of the best comics to come out of the New 52. But the other thing this does is it kind of makes me want a Batman Absolute Wonder Woman team-up book. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I feel like it would be pretty dope. I feel like any kind of team-up book from the Absolute Universe you guys would love. Wouldn't really matter what it was. But that's where they get to the actual place that they are going to. And Bruce asks, right, who is this man that's just kind of laying out here with coins on his eyes? And she says, a king who died fighting Arcalis. And he asks, and the coins? And she says, payment for the ferryman, right, to buy passage to Elysium, where fallen heroes dwell. And he asks the question, heroes, right, this guy lost. And Wonder Woman just says, apparently, his people loved him. They must have made this tribute. And so he says, the coins, do they really give people passage? And so it demonstrates to Wonder Woman the fact that Batman doesn't necessarily believe in any of that stuff, which you can't really put it past him, right? Because the reality here is that in the absolute universe, we're talking about a far more grounded version of the DC universe, as if the DC universe isn't grounded enough. And so when you have someone like Batman who's experiencing all this for the very first time, as opposed to the main DC universe version, who would just kind of take it all in and wouldn't be overly dismissive and just simply say, if I'm seeing it, it must be real. Absolute Batman kind of sees it and is like, this is all seemingly a bunch of malarkey. Now, he's not overly dismissive about it. It's just the attitude Wonder Woman seems to get here. And so that's why she says, some say they do nothing. Others say they grant crossing. Still others that they serve as a dream bridge, offering visions. But whatever the case happens to be, we have arrived. Arcalis guards that bridge there. Tonight, we'll camp. Tomorrow, we fight. And so at that point, while a little over 2 weeks has passed in this dimension, only like a day or so has passed within like the real world. And so you end up picking up with Alfred Pennyworth, right? Who's just like taking this great big huge box of like entrails, you know, over to Killer Croc. And this is hilarious because Alfred's just like, it's not that heavy, he says. Sure, if you're 21 years old and built like a brick, right? But in the midst of that, Killer Croc shows up and he was like, yes, meat. As any reasonable human being would say in response to a steak. And so at that point, Alfred's just like, yes, meat in the trolley. And Waylon just keeps saying meat. And Alfred's just like, over there, man, not me. I'm just bones, right? Over there. Don't you eat me. And then just like Waylon growls at him. A part of me wants to believe that Waylon was just trolling the hell out of Alfred Pennyworth and wasn't actually going to eat him, but just kind of convinced Alfred that he was. I don't know why, but that exchange is amazing to me. It's absolutely hilarious. But jumping back over to Absolute Batman and Absolute Wonder Woman here, that Wonder Woman tells him Arcalis is more than a centaur. He is a lord of transformation. His bow makes 2 legs into 4 and 4 into 2. The land he guards is full of beings he has changed. But Bruce doesn't really seem to be paying attention here because she kind of calls his name and he just says, I'm sorry, it's just first monsters under Gotham, then the thumb drive that you gave me, aliens, gods, and now this place. Because one of the things to keep in mind here is that Bruce has gotten a lot of information given to him through the thumb drive from Absolute Wonder Woman. So as soon as he got it, he had learned for the first time seemingly about Absolute Superman, the Green Lanterns, all that kind of stuff. This is all new to him. And again, it's one of the big differences and one of the coolest differences between Absolute Batman and Batman in the main DC universe. Absolute Batman's young, he's inexperienced, he's learning all of this for the first time. In all reality, he's reacting the way you or I would to this kind of thing. What do you believe and what do you reject, right? How much do you really trust your eyes in this world that you're being introduced to for the very first time, where within the span of a few weeks, your friends have either been more or less mutilated in a way that you couldn't possibly imagine. One of them has been turned into half of a crocodile. You fought a man who grew to probably about 50 feet tall, ultimately defeating him, all the while knowing there's just some kind of beyond human Joker that exists out there. And now you're learning about Absolute Wonder Woman, hell exists, the entire Greek pantheon is real. I mean, all this is being thrown at you in like the blink of an eye, right? It's a lot to take in. And so what ends up happening is she tells him, I understand, right? Your world is new and strange to me. So here, and she offers him something. Initially he's like, you know, what is it? And she says, it will protect you, not against injury or death, but at least against Arcalis' magic. And he asks her, right, do you really think I can do this? Help my friend. And she just says, everything you need lies inside of you. Drink. Now sleep. And ultimately he does, right? But she puts a couple coins over his eyes, which give him passage to the afterlife. And he meets his father. And this is one of the most beautiful moments that I think I've ever seen, right? It's phenomenal. I don't even know if I would compare it to the moment when Bruce Wayne met his father from the Flashpoint universe in the button. As beautiful as that moment was, right? As incredible as that moment was, right? We rise! And like Thomas Wayne goes running to confront Dr. Manhattan. You guys remember that? It was amazing. God, it was so phenomenal. But this is far more touching than that, I think. It's an incredible moment because he appears to his father not as Bruce Wayne, right? As Batman as we know him, but a child, right? And when he sees his dad, he just runs and hugs him the way that a child would. And his father just says, walk with me. And he says, so what is it, right? What's on your mind? And Bruce just says, it's just, you are a hero, Dad. That day at the zoo, you saved us. Me, Ozzy, Waylon, all of us. But me, I'm trying, but I just keep hurting everyone that I care about. And that's where his father says, this might come as a surprise, but I don't think of what I did that day at the zoo as saving you. And Bruce is just kind of like, why? Right? And he says, because for me, saving you was what I did every day before that one, teaching, being your dad. And Bruce just says, I don't understand. And his dad tells him, you're an engineer, Bruce. You know that building things is not about anyone ribbon cutting. It's the commitment to making the city better, visualizing what could be, and working every day to make it possible, little by little. Even in those moments, it seems out of reach, especially in those moments. So get out there and build. And Bruce just says, I really miss you, Dad. And so in that moment, he wakes up. And it's amazing. Such an incredible moment in this story, man. It amazes me that even after all these years, man, Scott Snyder still got it, bro. That guy still got it. And so when he initially goes to talk to Diana, she just says, I'm sorry, Bruce, it's time. Get ready. And so he kind of looks at her. And then that's kind of his recollection and his realization. What he was experiencing was real, which means what she's been telling him about traveling to the afterlife by way of coins, that's real as well. And so what he says, right, he says, the artifact that we need. And Wonder Woman says, I can help you in the fight, but it must be given to you when you best him. And so at that point, she calls him out. And Arcalis shows up, and this dude looks like a menace. I mean, he looks absolutely amazing. Don't get me wrong. One of the coolest designs I've ever seen, right? But he says, Diana of the Amazons, daughter of Circe, who, though gifted with powers of transformation like myself, is too good to consort with us lowly beings down here. What divine joy I shall take in felling you and your mortal mate. And they're like, we're not together. And they say it at the exact same time, which I'm going to be honest with you guys, kind of makes me hope that Absolute Batman and Absolute Wonder Woman kind of end up becoming a thing. I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I think it'd be dope to see him as a couple, but the two of them just start tearing into this guy. And it's kind of cool because in that moment, Bruce manages to like land some pretty solid hits and then hit this guy with his axe. But that's where when he falls down, Wonder Woman says, never stand behind a centaur. And Bruce is just like, why? And he just gets hit with horse's hooves, right? He gets sent flying, right? And at that point, Arcalis is just like, shame. I admit he had a warrior's heart because he just kind of goes flying off, right, this building and seemingly down into the ether, wherever that may lead, most likely down into hell. But then in that moment, Wonder Woman sees Pegasus and she just says, Godspeed, my friend. And Arcalis, right, just not really knowing what's going on here, simply says, he might have made a fine centaur, perhaps a bat centaur for my stable. But in that moment, Pegasus comes flying back out of the clouds and Batman's riding him. And I don't know why, man, but this is dope. And he just says, I got your bat centaur right here. And at that moment, Arcalis says, all right, Amazon, from 2 legs. And at that point, Batman says, Wonder Woman, look out. And he says, to 4, Diana, and fires the shot. And Batman immediately jumps in the way of it, and he gets hit. Now, of course, Arcalis gets pissed, right? You know, insolent. And in that moment, Wonder Woman attacks him and says, you are right. My mother is master of transformation, but so am I. Watch closely as I transform your face. And just like clocks this guy, sends his teeth flying and knocks him out in one punch. And at that point, she goes running to Bruce, but he says, I failed him. I couldn't, right? The artifact. And Wonder Woman just snaps the thing off and she says, you've not failed, Bruce. Remember what I told you. Now, let's get you home. And he just says, not yet, right? I haven't had the chance to say goodbye. And his father says goodbye to him. So again, incredibly touching, right? Just an amazing amazing moment in this story. And so you pick up on Sunday, right? Because only a couple days have passed here in the real world, about 2.5, give or take a little bit. The alarm goes off and he's just sitting there with the arrow sticking out of his chest. And that's when he just thinks to himself, right? Remember, what did she say? And Absolute Wonder Woman says, everything you need lies inside of you. And so in that moment, he pulls out the arrow and then just kind of recites to himself what it is that Arcalis says. Turn 2 legs into 4 and 4 into 2. The artifact. He had it in them the entire time. And so at that point, he ends up traveling back to work on Monday, right? He's got a busted up arm and people are just like, man, what the hell did you do to your arm? And he was like, oh, I was just following your advice, Mr. Fox, right? Touched some grass, rode a horse, got into a fight. And Fox is like, but I mean, he says, no, it's cool. I'm just messing with you, right? I slipped in the shower. He's like, we have to go start building things. But what he did with the artifact is he attached it to the wall down in the cave, right down in the sewers where Waylon Jones is. And he says, wear this necklace. Let it touch your skin. You are never alone. Because seemingly it would turn him back into either a human form, or at the very least, he would look like a human with a reptilian form. So the traditional Killer Croc as we know him in DC Comics. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Yet another stellar comic from the Absolute Batman line. I gotta say, man, like Scott Snyder, dude, this guy is firing on all cylinders, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.